Welcome, this is Paula and welcome back to my crafting channel. We're going to play today with a fabulous new range out from close to my heart, and it's called Daisy Daisy, which you can see from the paper in front of you is really the theme of what's going on here. It's fabulous, it's got lots of those really rich greens and beautiful pinks and whites popping out, and it has also got some really neutral stripes and checkers and gingham, those sorts of things too. So it's got a real versatile effect. What I love the most about this range is this absolutely gorgeous stamp set. So it has got a lovely big daisy with the larger size leaves and some inner pieces, but it's also got this gorgeous little bunch of daisies on the side as well, which is really usable. I do love the two titles, and we've also got some other little elements that you can use for foliage or for texture on your page, which is always such a little bonus on a stamp set. So this is what we're going to play with today, and we're going to create a double page. So I'll give you a little look at what that double page looks like. So I started off, this is the very first thing I've created with this paper. I wanted to just take the rich green from the paper and match it up with some of my photos. I didn't have pinks in my photos, I had more peachy tones, so I pulled in our peach and our melon inks to help set that off. So this is the double page we're going to put together today. So the materials you need for this page is just this one patterned piece, the one that's got the rich green on one side and the gingham on the other. I've used 2 sheets of toffee, both dark side and light side, and 2 sheets of our white daisy, and then I did pull in a 6 1/4 by 4 1/4 photo mat. So the 2 background sheets is 1 toffee and 1 white daisy. Now I've actually gone away and treated the background sheet with a wood grain effect, which was shown to us by a very talented maker on our maker group, which I will tag her name below. Now I've also cut out a little section in the center because I'm going to use that as a photo mat on the other side. So that is your base pages. Then with your second piece of toffee, you are going to cut out a 10" by 10" piece, which will be your frame here, and the pieces left over from that 10" by 10" are going to be used, or one piece is going to be used on the opposite side of the page at about 2 inches or just under. So that's getting yourself prepared. With 1 sheet of your white daisy, your other sheet of white daisy, you're going to cut it just under 10 inches square, just so that it's got that slight little bit of a photo mat going around. And we're all ready to start creating. Now with the piece of green patterned paper, I have cut 2 strips of white daisy, 1 inch by 12, and cut one of those in half. Then I've cut the other strip of 1 inch into sections of 4 inches. And I'm going to place one of each of these over the other side, and these will be used later. Now we get into creating the beautiful circle that I had on display in my original layout. And this is really the most sort of technique driven part of the layout. It looks quite gorgeous, it looks like it's got a little bit of texture to it, and it's an idea I got from a card that was posted on the internet by Jackie Williams. She's with another company, and I saw that she had used this idea of a textured inking. So I thought that idea would look fabulous in a large form as well. So with all of this adhered on your page, you can then go off and create yourself a circle mask. So I have cut out of the center of this piece of scrap cardstock that I had available, 8 3/4 inch circle. It really doesn't matter what size circle, so long as it's going to fit within the base you've got here. Now I cut it inside the full 12 by 12 piece of cardstock so that once this was adhered, I could simply place this over the top, and I knew that I was going to get it centered and it will work really well for us. It's also going to be reusable for the class that I will be running with my ladies. So you're going to adhere this on here, and then you're going to grab your masking tape. Now you can choose whichever sort of tacky tape you've got. You might even have some long just strips of cardstock. It doesn't actually need to be this, although I love the fact that this is tacky. It is going to stay in place, and it's very thin, so you're going to be able to sponge right up to the edge. So I just rip a piece that's about the right width, and then I tear down the center, making it a little bit higgledy-piggledy so it's got a bit of interest to it, all the way down, and that gives us 2 pieces we can use with a bit of a tiered finish. Next I'm going to place this maybe on a slight angle over my piece, and I'm going to let that sit nicely, and I'll grab a sponge. Now I often use these sponges in class because they are very affordable. You can chop them up to whatever size you prefer to use. And I also am going to grab some inks. So the inks that I chose to go with my photos was the Evergreen, which is this rich green colour in the paper. I bought in mint purely because the dress my daughter was wearing was slightly more mint than Seabrook. Seabrook would work perfectly here too. Then I brought in those more peachy shades. So I brought in the melon for a richer colour and peach for a lighter colour. So I've got 2 of each tone. I'm going to work with the greens first. So purely I grab my green, and I think I went with the dark one first. Used a dark sponge, and I always stamp a sponge off onto a scrap piece of paper on the side. So I'm just going to tap this over here, get a little bit of the ink off, make sure this is lined up given that I haven't got it adhered at the moment. It is much better to have it adhered, and then I'm just going to do some light sponging along this area. And I'm just going to keep it as light as possible. This is quite a dark colour. I do circular motions, and I do find that if you've done a little bit of sponging with your sponge first off on another piece of paper, a little bit of rubbing around, it's going to work better for you. It won't look so grainy. So I've done my first little image here. Peel this one off, and then I'm going to pop this on a slightly different angle. Take my lighter green, which is the mint that I'm using today, which is actually a retired colour of ours. Sponge this up, and now if you don't want to have any blending whatsoever, you can pull in your other mask that you've got waiting and just roughly pop it across here. I'm not too worried, this is a lighter shade anyway, and I'm just going to ink it up and grab a bit of colour through. It's a much lighter colour, and it's not going to really affect that pattern across. So I'll speed up my video now and show you it appearing in a little bit faster motion. So just a little bit about the photos I'm using. I had a voucher for a beautiful restaurant that is near us, and so my husband decided that I could take the kids, which was really cool. So I took 3 of my 4 children out, and we had a beautiful meal. I think the kids absolutely loved being able to order something a little bit fancier than what we normally would take them to. My youngest stayed home with my husband, and they ordered in McDonald's, which they were very happy to have as well. I think we had the better deal, but I think they thoroughly enjoyed themselves as well. So it was a really lovely night out. So we've reached this stage now with the base done. Now before I go any further, I'm going to take this to one side, use the inside part of my mask to cover my inked pieces, and then take the Evergreen shimmer brush and do a little bit of splattering around the outside of this piece. And with that splattering complete, it always just adds a little bit of something to a plain white background. We now just have to do a little bit of inking on the opposite side, similar to what we have just achieved. And I did this just to create a little journaling spot here. So with one of the the strips that you had left over from trimming down this piece, I have cut a piece that's just under 6 inches wide, and it's going to fit on my little piece that I have popped over here. I'm also going to use my slightly smaller piece of 6-inch cut to go above. So it's that white piece that we now have to do some sponging over, and I did exactly the same process, so I won't bother showing you again, but I just literally popped my little sponges across, did some sponging in, I've got this upside down, in the greens first, and then I kept moving this up and did some sponging in the peaches. So that's how I achieved my little photo mat on this hand side too. Now the last step we've got to do to finish off our background is stamping, and this is the fun part. So we have this gorgeous stamp set. It is actually called Daisy Daisy, funnily enough, and I've taken this little bunch of stamps from the side. I like to use archival black if I want a really good black image. And it is best to stamp this on a good solid surface. Now I'm actually on a bit of a wobbly table to do this filming, so it's not the best place to do my stamping, but I'll just show you how I go about stamping. So first off, I always condition my stamp, and then I always do about 5 or 6 stamps onto some scrap paper just to get a nice image starting to flow from the stamp itself, and to make sure that my ink pad is juicy enough to give us that great crisp finish. Then I'm going to lay this in a sort of slight angle near the bottom of the circle, overlapping mostly with just a little bit coming off the edges. So I'm going to do one stamp there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mask. So I go just get a scrap piece of cardstock that is surplus to requirements, and I grab my wider masking tape and I run a piece of tape over the entire piece. So I'm just going to cover this with some masking tape, just like this. That way I can now stamp on here with it being a bit more of a solid surface, and then cut out my mask. So as you can see, I did this on this piece here. I have stamped on the background, this was underneath here, and I had my mask as well over the top. So I've gone and trimmed around the outside. I've now actually ended up with 2 masks, the main piece of cardstock mask and the thinner mask come from our masking tape. Now I do find that the thinner masks are going to work better because they are that much thinner. You can actually stamp right up to the edges. So I do like to do that for my mask. So our original stamp was stamped down here. Then I masked that up and I grabbed my block and I stamped above it. Now I stamped it making sure that the stems were in line with the one below. So that gave me a higher image, and then I also stamped off to the side. So this mask, you only have to do the one mask. You can mask it for that one up there, and you then do a slight stamp on the inside. And I'll show you the finished result so you can see what I mean. So I stamped once here, I stamped once above it, and then I stamped once to the side. And that's all I did to create my little cluster to the side of that circle. So I hope that's given you plenty of tips to see how this whole page came together. The final little aspects that I have done on here, which I can just talk you through, is that I pulled in the sticker sheet for the titles, and I also pulled in the sticker sheets for some of the dovetailed elements that were on the sheet itself, as well as using all the little bits and pieces that I had left over to do some more dovetailing along the edges. And this just created a nice little border for this piece that was sitting to the side. I did do a little bit of journaling around the outside because I do with my black journaling pen, because I do enjoy having that kind of depth of framing around the outside. And obviously I've used my journaling pen to pull in some lines in here alongside a little bit of stamping. Just this cute little piece down this bottom, stamped twice, and the good times little icon stamped above. So I hope you enjoyed seeing how that came together. It is a fun layout, doesn't require a huge amount of your Daisy products, but it does make most of that lovely stamp set. Thanks for watching, and I hope you get to create this page yourself sometime soon.